I want to dedicate the shir to my father-in-law, my shrer, Chaim Mordechai Moshe ben Yeshua Eliezer. The source of the shir should go for the Aliyas Neshama, his Aliyas Neshama, in Gan Eden. Okay. Since this week is Shavuot, I thought maybe I would speak a little about that. Since we're coming up to a major Jewish holiday and so on, you know. I thought I'd mention certain ideas about Shavuot. Shavuot is an interesting concept. It's an interesting idea. The Torah that was given on Shavuot is not the same Torah that we have. Not that it's a different Torah, but it's not really the same. What the Jews had succeeded in doing at Matan Torah is that they had succeeded in restoring themselves to the same situation or circumstance as Adam Rishon before the sin. Now, we don't know what Adam Rishon before the Chet was. He was some kind of an incredible being, person, to such an extent that the Malachim, the angels, began singing Shira to him. They clearly thought he was a divine being. And of course he wasn't. But we're looking here at an awesome being. Makes sense because he is really a handiwork of the Rebbeinu Shalom, as they say, Yitzir Kapov Shel Kodesh Baruch Hu. He is the handiwork of God directly. But more than that, because Adam Rishon embodied in himself, first of all the neshamas. Not only that, he was connected to the totality of creation. He was the first and last individual that could rectify creation singularly, just single-handedly, which is awesome. So as such, he reflected the entire Bria was in him, that he was connected to. Therefore, he could rectify, he could do a tikkun of the entire Bria.
Chava was not part of the original plan?
Chava was. No, she was.
So it's not really Adam by himself then?
Well, it's really Adam and Chava, yeah. Because it says, Vayikra Shmom Adam. And he called their name Adam.
Oh, they were one being.
Correct, that's right. Except the Rebbeinu Shalom decided to take that one being and split it. But originally, man and woman were one. Because there's a concept of Zocha and Nekeva. So that concept of Zachrus and Nakvus always existed. The only thing is that it existed as one entity as opposed to two. And the Rebbeinu Shalom, of course, decided that he would make two entities. And therefore, obviously, he split Chava. But this concept obviously always was. So Adam Rishon before the Chet, before the sin, was an awesome being. Obviously, he sinned, and therefore, he changed many, many different things in the Bria. Now, what Adam Rishon knew, we have no concept of what he knew. He knew an awesome amount of an awesome understanding of Torah, actually. The fact that the Ha'ora, the amount of presence of God was so great that all you needed was one mitzvah to the tikkun, basically. Even though the Mendel says there was the 7 mitzvahs of Noach, whatever. But basically it was really one mitzvah, don't eat from that tree. And that's an important idea, which I once mentioned, that the concept of Torah is the concept of Torah really is that it embodies the totality of the Bria. That's the concept of Torah. And the mitzvah itself is the tikkun device. And obviously the ha'ora, the amount of illumination or enlightenment or revelation of God and so on was so enormous that all you needed was one mitzvah to perform. That's it. And had he done that, then he would have been Mashiach. He would have been Mashiach. And therefore, Shabbos would have been the 7,000th year, and then Olam Haba would have started shortly thereafter. In fact, it's an interesting remez, because Tuesday is a good day. We know that, because there's Kitov twice. It says that God saw what he made was good. That was the first Tuesdays. I should say on Monday he didn't complete the job. So, and it said Kitov, and then on Tuesday he completed the job. So it says Kitov twice. right? And so on. So what's interesting about it is why? Because why would what does that mean? But what it would mean is that the first Tuesday was let's say refers to the 3,000 years. You have Sunday first 1,000, Monday is the second 1,000, and Tuesday was the beginning of the 3,000 years, because 1,000 years corresponds to one day of creation. So 1,000 years is the year 2000, and Avraham Avinu was 52 years old when the world turned 2000. So that's Tov, that's the beginning of the Jewish people, right? And that's the beginning of the Tikkun process. Okay? But the following Tuesday, if you go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and 7, is the 10th day, right? From first Sunday of 7 days. Then the following Tuesday is the 10th day. Yom Haba begins at 9001. It begins in the 10,000th year, you see, and therefore it says Ki Tov twice. So that second Ki Tov refers to the following Tuesday, it's the same Tuesday, but the next week, and that's the beginning of Yom Haba. See?
Yeah, Yom Mashiach year 6,000.
Yeah, so Yom Mashiach is really a tekufa, it's a period of time at the end of Olam Hazeh, at the end of this world. It's really what it is. Yom Mashiach, it has nothing to do with Olam Haba.
That's the 7,000. What is Yom Mashiach?
Yom Mashiach is a time at the end of the 6,000 year.
Okay. And then you have 1,000 years of Mashiach?
No.
What's after the six? What's at the end of the 6,000?
No. Let me give you the periods. There's the neshama before it enters the world. That's one. Then there's the neshama in Adam Rishon. That's two. He failed, right? Then let's put it this way: you can look at the period of man, or the period of the progression of this world in several ways. One, there's before the world was created, which means before this world was created, the neshamas are in wherever they are. Then you have this world, so the second phase would be Adam Rishon before the sin. Third phase would be Adam Rishon after the sin until Avraham Avinu. Fourth phase would be Avraham Avinu until the Yom Mashiach. Yes, what number are we up to? Four. The fifth phase would be from the Yom Mashiach until the end, until the 6,000th year. It's 5. And then after the 6,000th year is the beginning of the 7,000th year, 8,000th, 9,000th. And at the beginning of the 10,000th year, which is the year 9001, is the beginning of Olam Haba.
So Mashiach is 1,000 of those 3,000?
No. Mashiach is the last period of time before the end or before 6,000 years. So we are in the English year, right? 2014. The end of the world will be in 2240. It will be in the English year 2240. 2240. It's over.
And what happens between that and Olam Haba? Those 3,000 between the end of the world, Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. Do we know what happens in those 3,000?
Between what?
Between the end of Olam Hazeh.
Yeah. Ramchal's going to talk about that a little further on. Yeah. So the Yom Mashiach is the last period of time, phase, so to speak, of the end of the 6,000th year. And that will last a certain amount of time. Okay? So really, this world only has another 200.
2,000.
What?
You said 2240?
2240, so what are we looking at here?
228. 226.
26? Yeah. We only have another 226 years to go. And then it's over with. Then this world is over with. It's interesting. So the Mashiach has to come before the English year 2240, or the Hebrew year 6,000, right? We have 5,774, right? And he ends his time at the year 6,000. And that's it. That's the end of human history. It's over with. There's 6,000 years, and human history is now over. And what happens is you have the next 3,000 years as Olam Haba develops. If you remember, I told you there's a retransformation. That retransformation from Olam Hazeh into Olam Haba takes 3,000 years. But it doesn't make difference. The main thing is once a Mashiach comes, then all the terrible, the bad times, all the evil, all that stuff is gone. Then it's only Tov once Mashiach comes. So what's the difference if it takes a couple thousand years? It's all Tov anyway, it just gets better and better and better, and so on. So those are really the tekufos of Olam, of this world. And even the Yemei Mashiach, the end of time, which I'm not talking about now, there are 3 subphases. The Messianic era itself is the Ikvus de Mashiach, which means the footsteps of the Messiah. Then the Aschalta de Gula, the beginning of redemption. And then you have the Yemei Mashiach, the Messianic era. Those are 3 distinct subphases in the Messianic time period. We are now, if you want to know where we are at, we are now, we are coming toward the end of the termination phase, which is the Ikvus de Mashiach. We are coming toward the end of that, and it's only a short amount of time till you become Aschalta de Gula. That's what we're all waiting for, Aschalta de Gula. But in any case, so therefore this is what happened. So that's Adam Rishon before the sin, and then of course he sinned, and therefore the tikkun got much worse. So what happens is because Adam sinned, therefore there was a tremendous amount of darkness. So the Torah changed. It became, instead of 1 mitzvah, it became 7. You see, because the greater the choshech, then the greater is the need to remove the choshech. So what happens is there are more mitzvahs. And as mankind sinned more and more, what happened? The Torah went from 7 to Taryag, 613. Grows. Interesting.
The Zakos is Yisrael. Right?
What?
The Zakos is Yisrael could be understood as Zikui, to purify Yisrael.
Yeah. And then as Jews sin more, you need more mitzvahs, so along comes the Rabbanan, rabbinicals. See? So they add to the Torah. Why? Because it's getting darker. And then as it gets darker and darker, there's even more mitzvahs, and those are minhagim. That's community. So each one is adding to the amount of mitzvahs in that sense. You have Minat Torah, you have the 1, 7, 613, rabbinical, midrabbanans, right? Then you have minhag, which is community. And then the last thing is chumrah, where you yourself will decide to have a stringency. So Torah grows as the darkness grows, because you need that much more to overcome the darkness.
But
It's interesting.
One doesn't wash the other.
What was that?
One doesn't wash the other.
What does wash the other mean?
I mean to say is if you have Averis, you have Averis. The mitzvah doesn't cancel the Avera.
No, I didn't say it cancels. What the mitzvah is a device that will bring more ore down. It doesn't cancel. No. But the darker, the more darker something is, the more light, the more device you need to do the more mitzvahs you need to bring down more ore to counter the darkness. You see, it's like it's like I say, if you want to dig a small hole, you use a little shovel. You want to build a building, a foundation, you bring what? You bring this humongous what do you call it? The
backhoe, bulldozer.
Who bulldozer? Well,
Backhoe.
right? Who?
The backhoe.
The who?
The shovel thing on the back of the
Well, I mean, a bulldozer, and if you want a real big stuff, you got to bring one of these
cranes.
cranes, I mean, humongous things, Same thing. The bigger the hole, the bigger the machine. Same thing. The more darkness, which is called the more hester, the bigger the machine, and the machine is the mitzvahs. See, so there's been a steady, what do you call it? A growth in the amount of mitzvahs because the choshech, the hester, gets bigger. You see, so it's interesting that Torah is a device, or the mitzvahs are a device, right? That's variable. Depends on the choshech. You see, which most people do not realize. Because the real question is, was Adam Rishon Jewish? And the answer is, of course not. So then why did the Bria stop at Avram Avinu? Why did it wait 2,000 years? And the answer was, which I had spoken about, you remember, Adam Rishon was not Jewish, but he was Yisrael. He was a Yisrael. That's really what he was. And I mentioned the difference. Anybody remember what the difference between a Yisrael and a Jew is?
Jew is historical, whereas Israel has to do with the job, the task.
Yeah. The concept of Jew is a nation. He's a descendant of Avraham Avinu. So a Jew is a Yisrael. Yisrael is the individual that can do the job of tikkun, which means to bring the divine presence back. So Adam Rishon was Yisrael, but he was not Jewish. It's interesting, which I always like to joke around. So Rosh Hashanah, when Adam Rishon was born, because I asked the question, what happened on Rosh Hashanah? Every holiday we do has a historical event, a Jewish historical event that corresponds to it, right? So I asked the question, well, what happened on Rosh Hashanah? There's no historical event. Was there a historical event? No. There's no Jewish historical event that corresponds to Rosh Hashanah. Everything else has a Jewish historical event.
It's a mankind event.
It's a mankind event, exactly. It's an Israeli holiday. It sounds funny. It's an Israeli holiday because Adam Rishon was Israel. He was an Israeli. A different way of understanding that. But he was Israel, and exactly, it's a mankind holiday. It's not a Jewish holiday. But since we took over the job of Adam Rishon, therefore we are Yisrael. And Yaakov Avinu became Yisrael. I'm good with it. I say Kaddish. I'm going to say Kaddish after the Shir from Hashveh, so when I finish the Shir, just stay and I'll say the Kaddish. Yeah. Anyway, so by the time the Jews got to Egypt, they had brought, or I should say when they left Egypt, they had brought the Bria, the creation, to the level of Adam Rishon before the sin. So the Jews were not human in that, as we know human beings. They were not human. We don't know what it is. What does it mean? Zoyama is the influence of the Satan in the physical body. You see. So if the Zoyama of the Jews, by Matan Torah, they didn't have that, so then what were they? We don't know. We don't know. In any case, they had rectified the material, the physical of the world, where it did not have Zoyama, certainly not in them. And all they needed was one more mitzvah. That was it. They needed one mitzvah. And had they done that one mitzvah, okay, then they would have been, Moshe Rabbeinu would have been Mashiach ben Yosef. Because that's really who he was. He was the Mashiach ben Yosef. And he would have been Mashiach ben Yosef, and the redemption would have started then. You see. Instead, what they did is they sinned, and the mitzvah, of course, was not to do the Chet Egel. That was the mitzvah. And the mitzvah was not to do the Chet Egel. That was the mitzvah. It's very interesting. Because had they not done the Chet Egel, what would have happened? Right? So the Geula would have started. You see, the Messianic light would have come down. Now it's interesting that what type of a nisoin was the Chet Egel? No, I don't mean that. It was a philosophical Chet. You think about that. What was the Chet? What was the nisoin of Adam Rishon? What was the nisoin of Adam Rishon? Really, Does he believe that the tree, that God got his powers from the tree? Because really what the Nochash said, and that's the argument he presented to Chava, Rashi brings it down, that what? That the Nochash, the snake, said to Chava, you know why God, the Rebbeinu Shalom, does not want to eat from that tree? Because that tree is powerful. And the Rebbeinu Shalom ate himself from that tree, and that's how he became God. That's what he said. And that's why he doesn't want you to eat from the tree. So therefore, if you eat from the tree, what do you say? V'yisim kelokim, you will become like God. And man always wants to become God. And we think about that all day long. To be independent, to be omniscient and all that. So he tempted, and Rashi brings this a medrash. So he tempted Chava with the possibility of becoming God. Chava bought into the argument, and she ate from the tree, and she realized that the whole thing is a sham. It's not true. Okay. So what she should have done, unfortunately, she should have just said, okay, it's over for me, because the Rashim said, and the day you eat it, you will die. But instead, what she did is, she gave it to Adam, knowing that he would also die. That's the chet of Chava, and so on. But in any case, because she didn't want him to get another wife, that's where the old business where women become jealous and so on. That's where it all starts. Anyway. But, I just, as an aside, I always get a kick out of the fact that in the first recorded conversation in human history, not between the Bereshit and Adam, but between the Nochash and Chava, that's really the first recorded conversation, there already was present Lashon Hara, Lechilus, and Motzei Shemra. How? You know how? It's astounding. In the first recorded conversation, so the first thing, so let's take a look. What's Lashon Hara? Lashon Hara is harmful communications. So when he said that God ate from the tree, he was degrading the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? It's not that Rebbeinu Shalom is this incredible being. Come on, it's the tree, right? And therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom ate from the tree, and therefore he's not what you think he is. That's Lashon Hara because he degraded God. That was the first thing he did. But the problem is that's a lie. So that's called Motzei Shemra. So not only did he degrade God, the whole thing was a lie, so that's defamation. Right? Wasn't even true. So therefore it's called Motzei Shemra, defamation. So he degraded God, and then he defamed God. And L'chilis was, because he said, you know why God doesn't want you from the tree? It's not for your benefit. It's because he's jealous of you. He doesn't want you to become God and have a rival. So that would engender tremendous hatred from Chava to God. Says, who is this being? He's jealous of me? You mean and he wants to deny me the ability to become God? How dare he? And that would have created tremendous sinner, see? And that's L'chilis. Got it? So in the first recorded conversation in human history, you already had Lashon Hara, Motzei Shemra, and L'chilis in one conversation. Amazing. Anyway, so that's what he told Chava. And she, of course, carried the argument to Adam.
Rabbi Kessin, you had once said, I believe, that Adam Harishon, before he ate from the Eitz Hadas, had an unbelievable, phenomenal level of intelligence.
Yeah.
As though he could see from one end of the universe to the other.
Yes.
So when they ate from the Eitz Hadas, was there an increased level of knowledge and intelligence? Because if Chava ate it first, did she have this expanded awareness? And if she didn't, why would she tell her husband, eat from this? When they ate from it, was there truly a genuine greater knowledge? That
there was, yeah, that's why it says, Eitz Hadas Tevurah. There was, but it was a different type of knowledge. It wasn't the matter of truth and non-truth. It was a matter of good and evil, which is different than truth and non-truth. Truth and sheker, it's now bad, good and bad, and so on. But I'm not getting into that. But it's clearly was a different dimension of knowing and so on. Yeah. So in any way, so therefore, what was Adam Rishon's task? He had to distinguish. He said, "Wait a minute, no, this tree is an illusion. The Rebbeinu created the tree, and now I'm under a test. They're trying to fool me and saying that the Rebbeinu ate from the tree and he became God that way. No, the tree is an illusion. It's really, the Rebbeinu is God. So that's what's called the test of theology. What is your understanding of the nature of God? Why was he tested with that type of a test? You understand what I'm saying? The test is a theological test. You see, what do you understand about the nature of God? Do you think God ate from the tree, so therefore he's not this being you think he is? Or, no, he did not eat from the tree, and he just created the tree, so you should be tempted to think that way. You see? So the test really by Adam was a theological test. What is your understanding of the nature of God? See? Why? Because Mida connect Mida. Had he said, no, the tree is not the source of God. The Barsham is God, and the tree is just there to tempt me, right? So he would have realized that what? Einoi Milvadoi. That God is really God, and there is nothing. There's no other God besides God, the tree. But there is only God. So then, Mida connect Mida, he would have had the Gilo of Einoi Milvadoi. You see. He would have had the revelation of the exact nature that he just now struggled to understand. It's a measure for measure. Mida connect Mida. Got it? That's why he had the test of the nature of God. Because had he passed, then the nature of God would have been revealed to him. That's measure for measure. Now, if that's the case, yes. In other words, you're always tested on what you could have been, what you would get. If you're going to get the Gilui of the Ribono Shel Olam, then you're tested on that Gilui. You understand what I'm saying? Which, by the way, is interesting. What's a test today? What's the major test now? For the last 100 years, what is the major test the Jew has? It's emunah, really. You know, it's emunah. Who is God? And so on. Why? Because when you're in Ikris Mashiach, because the Giloi of all of this will end in who is God. So therefore our test is who is God. Same idea. The test of Ikris Mashiach, since it's messianically related, what is the Or Mashiach? It is a revelation of who the Barsham is. Therefore, the last test has to be who is the Barsham. Measure for measure. You see? Today, it's Emunah is the main test. You know? That's why there's Habakkuk says, Tzaddik be'emunah so yichyeh. That in the end of time, a tzaddik will only have his emunah. What happened to everything else? You know? And even the emunah, because that's really where the test lies, in emunah. So therefore, by the Chet HaEgel, what was the test? Can God be an intermediary? Did they really believe that this Egel was God? No. But what they did is they needed an intermediary, you see. They needed an intermediary. And that Egel was the intermediary that they could relate to. So therefore, can he be represented by an intermediary? Some type of a shliach, a being that represents him? And the answer is, of course not. That's why you can't make any images. There's no such thing as an image. So they also had a theological test. Why? Because had they not done the chet, what would have happened? Had they believed, no, what's this nonsense? Being an ego, right? So then Moshe Rabbeinu would have been a Mashiach, right? And he would have revealed the Orishim, the Messianic light. And the Messianic light is what? Is the revelation of who God is and how he relates or connects to the whole Bria. See, again, that measure for measure. That's what would have happened. And therefore, that's the logic of why they were tested in Avodah Zarah. The interesting thing about that is something else, It's interesting. The Jews had a big problem. What was the problem the Jews had when they left Egypt? The problem they had was, you could take the Jews out of Egypt, no problem. But you can't take Egypt out of the Jews. The problem is, when you're a slave for 210 years, you have a slave mentality. It's very hard to do anything. Because you're so habituated. It's like your brain is hardwired, neurons, to believe you're a slave and that, and you can't do it on your own. And you cannot get rid of this concept of slavery. So what the Barsham did was very interesting. What he did was very interesting. What did he want from the Jews, really? It's very interesting what he wanted. He didn't want Moshe Rabbeinu to be the intermediary. People don't realize that. The Barsham wanted every Jew to be Moshe Rabbeinu. You know that? It's interesting. He didn't need an intermediary. Where do you see that? Because the Barsham gave them the Torah, and they all died. When the Barsham said the first two commandments, I am the Lord your God, and then he said, you will have no other God before me, they all died. Everybody died. So the Torah presents a medrash. The Torah presented itself to Hashem and said, this way, what are you giving to a bunch of dead people? So Hashem revived them. Chesed Mesim. You see. Question, why did he do it? Why did he reveal the first 2 commandments to the Jews? Because he wanted them to be the ones to makabel, not through Moshe. The first 2 commandments were not given by Moshe. It was given directly to each Jew. He was hoping, therefore, that each Jew would have been so enthralled. He used to talk to God? We don't know. I don't know if you know, but every time you look at a Chumash, when it says, Vayidaber Moshe, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor, you have any idea what's going on here? You talk about a being, right, that is not only infinite, the universe is 13.7 billion light years across. Let's understand who we're talking to. You know what light years? A light year is 6 trillion miles. How do you measure miles in the universe? Light. So light will travel 6 trillion miles, so we say a light year is really a measure of distance. And the universe, okay, so 1 light year is 6 trillion miles. The universe is 13.7, according to what they estimate, 13.7 billion light years. So multiply 6 trillion times 13.8 or 13.7 billion. You get a number which is quite large, I must say, it's an understatement, Yet all of this, right, but we say Molech Koretz Kavodah, which means that every place has God in it. So that means Rebbe Shem is humongous. He's a being that's the size of the universe. Yes? Sounds funny, but he is. But the universe is only the physical universe. What about all the olamas beyond, above that? So if all creation is pervaded by his presence, because Molech Zavoida, could you imagine the size of this being called God? You know what I'm saying? It's awesome.
But he's way beyond creation. Meaning, this is only creation.
But from our perspective,
right,
he's at least as large as creation. He's beyond that. Wait. So therefore, we'll think about this, right? So it says, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. Excuse me, you're speaking to this being? What in the world does that mean anyway? We think, God, he's speaking to some guy called God, so, there's God and there's Moshe. So Moshe said, hi. God says, hi, I want to tell you something, tell the Jews, We're talking about a being that is so far beyond man, and I'm just giving you one example. He's larger than all creation, because all creation is within him. So all of a sudden, this with Moshe, and he's all powerful, and so on and so forth. He's speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, like, what is that supposed to mean? How does he even do it? And so on. So the concept of who God is beyond belief. So what the Rebbe Shem wanted to do is what? He wanted to give Torah through the Jews, not through Moshe. And that's why he started it off. He gave the first 2 commandments not through Moshe, to the Jews directly. Wait a minute. So why couldn't they get the rest? And the answer is, of course they could have got the rest. So that's what he wanted to do. Give the Torah through the Jews. Okay?
So why did they refuse?
Oh.
Why B'davke after the second? Why not the first?
What was that?
Why B'davke after the second?
The second one?
After the second commandment, which should have been the first.
Well, because the first relate to him. The third one is, you shouldn't take his name in vain. But the first one is, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. And the second one is, you should have no other God before me. So really, they're flip sides of each other.
He's saying, why did they even have a problem after the first one?
Oh, so wait.
They both said it once, weren't they?
Yeah.
Right away.
Well, okay.
I'm saying, if it's too powerful for you, then anything Hashem says,
yeah,
killed you right away.
Yeah, but I'm just saying they're really connected, so therefore, whatever. Okay, although it's a valid question. Anyway, they all died. Okay, so they died, and so what's the problem here? Because they obviously could not tolerate that type of communications. But there's something else you have to realize. Moshe was the greatest Navi of all. Why? Because he had to be the greatest prophet. Why? Because when he received the Torah, it had to be the greatest clarity of all. Because if it wasn't clear, if it was a law of a level of prophecy, what would happen? then the Torah we get would be lower level of clarity, no good. So Moshe Rabbeinu, because he received the Torah to give to Klal Yisrael, had to be the greatest prophet, which means that the message had to be the greatest clarity known to man. But wait a minute. We say, Lord, come to Moshe. There was nobody like Moshe Rabbeinu, yes? Nobody was like Moshe Rabbeinu, yes? But it's not true in a certain sense. Because each Jew was like Moshe Rabbeinu, because remember, if the first two mitzvahs were given to the Jews, not through Moshe, then they had to have the same clarity as Moshe. But if that's the case, then they had to be as great in prophecy as Moshe, and they were. It was only when they said, we can't handle this, so that's when Moshe was the greatest prophet. And the Jews lost that ability. But really, the Jews were as great as Moshe Rabbeinu in Nevuah. You see, because they had to be, because the first two mitzvahs came through them, not through Moshe. You see. In fact, Torah is Gematia 6:11, not 6:13. Because the first two mitzvahs didn't come through Torah's Moshe, it came through the Jews. Interesting. So, why did Moshe do that? Because what the Moshe was hoping is that they would take a quantum leap. Now, sometimes a person, even though it's hard for him to change, will change 10 times what he could do. It's rare. It's called a quantum leap tshuva.
What does it mean Hashem was hoping?
Well, in other words, he was hoping that they would be even though they were habituated to being slaves, and they had this mentality, he was hoping that he would give them this giloi, 2 mitzvahs, and they would be so enthralled, they would say, hey, let's have the rest. Instead, what happened? They couldn't handle it, you see.
Hashem doesn't make mistakes.
No, it's not mistakes. He didn't make mistakes, but he gives you the attempt. He gives you the
could have overcome that.
Show you. But it would have been a quantum leap. But they could have made that leap. They could have said, we want you to give us the Torah through us. We don't need Moshe. But instead they ran to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, we can't take this. You, let him give it through you, and you will give it to us. You see. They couldn't do it. Okay? So, what happened? But Moshe wasn't going to give up. He says, okay, the reason why they ran to Moshe because Moshe was around. So what the Moshe did is he set him up, which is interesting. He made them think that Moshe died. Right? And when they saw the bear, they said, Kizer Ish Moshe, so they thought Moshe died. Right? So if Moshe died, then there's no intermediary. So Moshe was hoping, so to speak, that they would now say, well, there's no intermediary, we'll do it ourselves. You see? But they couldn't do it. They needed an intermediary, so they built the Egel. So the Jews had 2 attempts. Moshe gave them 2 chances that the Torah would be given through the Jews themselves. And it was only afterwards, when they failed twice with the Chet Egel and so on, that he said, okay, now only Moshe Rabbeinu.
Why did Hashem Davka want it to be straight through the Yidden?
Because each Jew is worthy to receive the Torah directly.
Why was it such an avla that they needed an intermediary?
What's such a what?
Avla.
What do you mean?
That was the chet. Everything that was the chet ha'egel. Let's go with that. That they
needed. The chet of the egel, the test of the egel was really a setup. The Russians were hoping
but
the same thing.
It sounds like that was an sign that you should accept the Torah without a intermediary. You should not feel the need for an intermediary.
Yes.
It sounds like that was the Nisayan.
Well, that they should not.
What is the avla of needing an intermediary? Why is that such a bad thing?
No, it's not. No, there's 2 avlas. First of all, you're making an egel.
Okay.
The second thing is not just, you're not only making an egel, but you also displaying the concept that the Muslim, there can be an intermediary. And especially that's after
putting too much weight on the intermediary.
Well, especially after what was revealed to you is Einei B'Vada. That's the first 2 mitzvahs were revealed to them,
That someone can represent.
Yeah. So therefore, what they did is they failed to take that opportunity twice. And therefore, from then on, it went through Moshe and so on. But at the same time, not only did they not say, we do it through us, but they also made an intermediary. You see, and at their level, how could you do that? How do you have an intermediary? How do you have an image that represents anything? And so on. So therefore, the story of the Egel is really the story of the Baruch Hashem attempt that they should have this quantum leap into Kedusha. and they fail. And we understand why, because they were slaves, and that's why the Moshe ultimately said, you'll all die in the desert, because obviously you can't get rid of that mentality and so on, you know.
But Hashem wanted it to go through all Klal Yisrael. They died after the first two commandments.
They died, yeah.
What about all the neshamas we're told, like ours, that were there? Were they there? Were our neshamas there at that time?
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
not one neshama could contain it? Obviously the neshamas didn't die. Not, if Hashem
No, the
wanted
Jew, they died, the Klal Yisrael.
those that were physically there.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
And even though Hashem wanted it to come through us, not one Jewish neshama was able to contain it. It seems like, why would you want that if not one...
Except for Moshe.
Except for
Well, except Moshe. You know, he was able to do that, you know. So what the Jews did is they lost this unbelievable gift. Can you imagine receiving the Torah by yourself? It's awesome. It would be an incredible, you know, that means you would have a direct communication with the Rosh, which we cannot even comprehend what that is. To communicate with a being like God is so far beyond what we can possibly imagine.
Is it fair to say maybe they wanted to? The fact that they died wasn't a conscious choice. Maybe they just couldn't contain it.
Well, that's it. I give an example. I sometimes give an example, like, what was their Nisayon, really, you know? How do you connect with that? So I'll give you an example, okay? Imagine a guy goes to Las Vegas. We all know what Las Vegas is. Las Vegas is Esau. It is the quintessential Olam Hazeh. You know, the place is awesome. If you want to understand what Olam Hazeh offers, you go to Las Vegas, you know. Whatever, so, you know. It's just an awesome place to see, because it tells you what really Olam Hazeh is if you really want to get into it, you know. I remember I once gave a Shabbaton in the Young Israel of Las Vegas, which is 20 miles from Las Vegas. I mean, it's 20 miles from what's called the Strip, you know. But I had to go see the Strip. Why? Because I had to see what is the Yerush of Esav. And you walk over there, you just like, it boggles the mind. There's like the Wynn, I think it's the name of the Wynn Hotel, or the Venetian, you know. The building cost $2 billion. You ever see a piece of building that costs $2 billion? You know what a building is that costs $2 billion? For a building, you know? And it's one building out there, Bellagio. I just remember, it's awesome. It's like whatever you can do in Olam Hazeh, they have. You know? It's a Musa Haskel. I had to see this is the Yerush of Esav. This is Esav at his best. You know? So imagine a guy goes to Las Vegas, right? And he goes there for whatever, gambling, whatever, everything in Las Vegas has to offer, right? And, you know, he has a fabulous time, right? Goes to sleep. Also in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. Give me an example. What the difficulty the Jews had. Right? What was it, 3 a.m.? He wakes up. He's startled. Why? He hears something. And he wakes up and he's looking. And all of a sudden, right in the front of his bed, right, there appears an apparition, an angel, a malach. A malach, right? In whatever guise, you know, the Kedusha of a malach. And he's in Las Vegas, right? And this guy's looking, he can't believe this. And the malach says to him, I've been sent, because you had some kind of schus, whatever, right? I'm sent here to tell you, this isn't the place for you. You got to get out of here, and all that. This guy's looking at the malach. And this guy's emotional, he's going crazy. I mean, the Kedusha of a malach, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, it's like beyond comprehension, right? And he's talking to the malach's talking to him and so on, you know. We just had the Manoach and today's, right? Except there, the malach was completely concealed as a human, because they didn't know who he was. It's just later they found out, you know. Let's assume this malach doesn't even conceal himself, you know. The malach is really, you know, this guy's going crazy. It's unbelievable. And the malach is giving a mussar to leave, take the next flight out, and all that kind of stuff, right? You know? And then the malach leaves. What happens to this guy? It's a Rahmanas on this guy. This guy is a basket case. Why? Here's why. Because he's just been introduced to a world that is so far beyond, it is so holy and so on and so forth, right? That, you know, that's one side of the picture. And there's an unbelievable desire to attach himself to that world. right? On the other side, he's in Las Vegas, and he's his old self. You know, he's the regular guy that loves to gamble, you know, loves to do all the other vices in Las Vegas, right? Now, he's not prepared for this, you know. It's like going with a sheretz in a mikveh, you know. You'd go in a mikveh and you got holding a sheretz, you know, and so on, you know. This guy's habitually, he's a guy who's into Las Vegas. And he's been to Las Vegas all his, you know, that kind of a lifestyle all his years. How does he make a quantum leap and discard his whole nature and go into Ruchnis? It's terrible. You understand what I'm saying? It's nature versus, you know, it's like, you know, it's supernatural stuff, you know. It's too much, you see. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who worked on himself for years, he already was Chatzi Ish Chatzi Elokim. You know, he already a half man, half God in that sense. So if he got the Rebbeinu Shalom, he could tolerate that, you see. He didn't have to fight his nature, you see. But the Jews, they're coming out of Egypt with all the stuff of Egypt. That's what I was saying. We want all the cucumbers and the gore, you know. I was wondering what the diet of Egypt was that these people always was bringing up the diet, you know, is we want the cucumbers, whatever, what they want. What's it?
Avatichim.
The avatichim, the watermelons, must have been clever stuff, you know. What? Yeah, must have been, you know, whatever. And so, you know, I mean, I can understand if they would have said, we want the sushi, you know. And so, you know,
Makes sense.
you know, Egypt makes incredible sushi. I can understand that, you know, but like, anyway, but, and they couldn't break their nature. So, but the Russian was hoping that they would make a quantum leap, and he would give them the Torah to them. But what's incredible is the Torah that he would have given them wasn't the Torah that we have. It was the Orishim. It was the Messianic light. That's what he gave them. Because this was before the Chet Ha'Egel. So what he gave them was an awe, a gilui, a revelation of who he is beyond comprehension, you know. And what they would have to do, obviously, is accommodate themselves and adapt to that awe. You see, but they couldn't. And then, like I said, he removed Moshe from the picture by allowing them to think that he died, right? And he was hoping again that maybe now there's no intermediary, you know. But no, they couldn't be, you know, they said, no, if Moshe's not around, we're going to make an intermediary, you know, and that's what they did, you see. So it's interesting, that's really what happens at the Chet Ha'Egel. That was their Nisayon. You can begin to relate to their Nisayon, you know. You know, imagine that if that happened to you, would you be able to do it? If a Malach appeared to you and said, hey, what would you think about that?
In the morning, if the house is settled and you think someone's coming in your door, you're scared to death.
No, the Malach doesn't have to open the door, he doesn't have to knock on the doors. I mean, believe me, the alarm systems don't register Malachim anyway.
Is there a connection between the fact Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to go on the original shlichus to Paroi, and meaning because he didn't want to become an intermediary in the eyes of Klal Yisrael? No. At that point in time, you need an intermediary to free them. No. The question is, once they got to Sinai was Sinai was what? The chosn is the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Kala, it says in today's Pasha, the Kala, Vayi Kala is Moshe. So Rashi says that it was a Kala, the Jews were Kalas. It was talking about a bride. I mean, this is no longer, they long ago gave up Egypt in that sense, you know. Now it's a wedding. It's a wedding between the Rebbeinu Shalom. Actually, it's a wedding between the Torah and the Yidden and God's father-in-law, so to speak, you know. But that's really what seemed to have occurred by Matan Torah. But what the incredible thing is, they didn't just get the Torah, you know, they got the Orishim, the Messianic light, which is a gilu that we cannot masi, you know. I once brought this medrash down. You know, it's funny, we have no idea what the Mashiach is going to reveal. But here's what the medrash says. The medrash at the end of Kohelah says that everything Moshe Rabbeinu gave Klal Yisrael, okay, is hevel compared to the Or Mashiach. You know what hevel is? Luft. It's not even a mamoshes. It's not even a thing. That's what the medrash says, you know. And you know, and what did Moshe give Klal Yisrael? What's our Torah today? Okay, we have Bavli, Yerushalmi, Shulchan Aruch, all the Sheilas and Shuvas. We have all the hundreds of thousands of Svarim written, all this, right? That's our Torah. And the Medrash says that all of this is zero. It's hevel. It's luft. It's not even a thing compared to the Or Mashiach. And the Or Mashiach is in this world. We're not talking about Olam Haba, right? We're talking about the Messianic era, which is the last time period of this world, Olam HaGeshem. It's incredible. What does that mean? What kind of a Torah is that? Forget about the Torah of Olam Haba. The Torah here, by the Mashiach, right, will make the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, all the Torah given by Moshe and so on and so forth, make that to be a zero? Could you imagine what awaits Klal Yisrael?
So they got the Torah's Mashiach, or they didn't? Or
They
were
did.
about to?
No, those first two mitzvahs was the or of the Torah's Mashiach in the form of those two mitzvahs.
The rest of
whatever
the
that was.
Dibros?
What?
The rest of the Dibros are not?
The rest of the no. Wait. I didn't get to the rest of the Dibros, you know. But in any case, so therefore that's the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah of Mashiach, which is awesome. Absolutely awesome. So when they did the Chet, right, and then the Chet Egel, so Moshe looked at them and he looked at Moshe Rabbeinu, he said, Lech Rei, go down. Because the Jews have corrupted themselves. Kishiches Amcho. You know what I'm saying? And therefore they cannot receive the Or Rishon. The Luchas Rishonis is the Or Rishon, you see. And because they had because they did the Chet Egel, they could not receive this Messianic light. It was over with.
Moshe did bring it down, though.
What?
Moshe did bring it down, though.
No, wait, well, you know. And not only that, Moshe Rabbeinu could not be Mashiach ben Yosef. It was over with. Because the whole reason why he was who he was because of Klal Yisrael. If Klal Yisrael cannot have the Or Rishon anymore, so he's not Mashiach. So he's coming down with the Luchas, yes? And all of a sudden he sees what's happening, and he takes the Luchas and he breaks it. Right? Why did he break it? Because if you cannot makabel that all, it will kill you. It's a guy in Las Vegas. He probably died afterwards, because he couldn't. He probably, he needed a major psychiatrist because he was so conflicted. He couldn't live with himself because, they used to say a guy went to Slabodka Yeshiva. They used to say a guy who went to Slabodka. You know Slabodka? Slabodka in Kovna, right? It was a place of incredible learning. So they used to say. And it illustrates. It said a guy went to Kovno with Slabot Yeshiva. It could be Olam Haba he won't have because some of these guys, they went off. They used to smoke on Shabbos. Whatever. They went off the derech. So it could be they used to say it could be Olam Haba he won't have. Nobody knows. One thing, Claude, Olam Haba said they Zicha won't have. Why? Because they see too much. A guy who sees that type of a truth, it could be he can't go all the way, but to go back, forget it. He sees the emes. He sees the shtus, the stupidity and the absurdity and the folly of what lies, Idam Hazeh, and so on. So, like I say, this guy's a basket case, So therefore, they could have received it, they didn't, and they had to go back, and they fell terribly, so But they could have had the Or Rishon, and that's really what Moshe was bringing down, that Or Rishon. You see? So Moshe Rabbeinu, and I'll end with this. That Medrash, by the way, says, that the Torah's Moshe is hevel compared to the Or Rishon, the Or of the Mashiach, right? And that the Or of the Mashiach is hevel compared to the Or of Olam Haba. Believe what's going on here? We cannot even masig the Or of Mashiach. And then the Medrash says that the Or of Olam Hazeh, or rather of Yemais Mashiach, is hevel compared to the Or of Olam Haba. Unbelievable what goes on there. Beyond belief what is waiting there. I think I once said this story about the Ari, right? What? He had an inkling of what's the Ari, he was once learning with one of his Talmidim on Shabbos, So all of a sudden the Ari put his head down like he fell asleep, and this guy's he's sitting next to the Ari, the Ari, and all of a sudden the Ari starts mumbling. mumbles, you know. Now, when the Ari mumbles, that's greater than, you know, full professors giving a whole lecture. I mean, it's the Ari. His mumbling is worth more than anything else. So what did the Talmud do? You don't remember this story?
Maybe.
But it's so. What the guy do? So he puts his ear next to the mouth of the Ari because he wants to hear what he's mumbling, you know. Because the Torah of the Ari, even when he's sleeping, is Gavaldi. Anyway, he puts his ear next to the Ari, and all of a sudden the Ari woke up. Wow, bad news. He woke the Ari up, you know. So the Ari realized that this Talmud is quite frightened, you know. So the Ari said, "Don't worry, it's okay." So the Talmud, you know, he said, "Okay." The Ari was okay with that. So he got a little more chutzpah. So he said, "What were you mumbling about? You know, what was it?" So the Ari told him, he said, "I'll tell you, I wasn't sleeping. What I did is I said Hashem, and I went up to Shemayim. My consciousness, whatever, you know, and all of a sudden, one of the Malachim came over to me and said, you know, what would you like to do?" So I asked him, "Well, what's happening up here?" So he said, "Well, there's yeshivas, you know, and, you know, Reb Shimon is darshaning here, and Reb Akiva is darshaning there, and that's what happened, you know, and so on." So the Ari said, "You know, I'd like to." So he asked her, "Well, what's Reb Shimon darshaning? Well, you know, that's what goes on up there, you know." So he said, he's talking about Parshas Balaam. So I have to go there. So he went to sit at the yeshiva of Reb Shimon. I think it was Reb Shimon, whatever. This might have brought down a Shifkei Ari, Reb Chaim Vital. So he went to the yeshiva, in Ramayla, in Shemayim, and he listened to the shir, whatever. And then, you know, so this Talmud, like, fascinated, you know. I say, what did he say? What did he say? Like, what does that sound like, you know? And so on, you know? So the Ari told him, "I want to tell you something. If I had 80 years to write, and all the reeds were pens, and all the oceans were ink, and I had 80 years to write, I could not write in 80 years what this man said in the time I was up there, which couldn't be more than 2 minutes." So what do we see from this story? You know, that we have a speck of reality. What we understand about reality is a speck, you know, in this it's like a grain of sand in all the beaches of the world. That's all we know, you see. So therefore, and that's the Torah being taught up there, by the way, is not the Torah of Olam Haba, because Olam Haba doesn't exist yet. We have to make it. The Torah up there is really the Or Mashiach. So could you imagine? He can't even write that out. Could you imagine what the Torah of Olam Haba is? You know what I'm saying? So this Torah of the Or Mashiach, they could have gotten, but they didn't. So therefore, the beginning of the understanding of what we miss, that Matan Torah really was the greatest attempt to bring Mashiach, and it almost worked. Almost worked. And had the Jews been makabel that and not done the Chet Egel, Moshe Rabbeinu would have been Mashiach ben Yosef, and there would be no such thing as Golos anymore, and we would have, that would have been the Messianic era would have been ushered in.
So what's our job in Shavuot?
Oh, well, so the job in Shavuot, and that's why, what's the Haftarah of Shavuot? What is it?
Ma'aseh Merkava.
Ma'aseh Merkava. Why? Why are we reading Ma'aseh Merkava on Shavuot? That's the Orishan. The Ma'aseh Merkava is the Orishan. That's what it is. But let me tell you one thing. Moshe Rabbeinu had a big problem. You have to understand what a leader is. Moshe Rabbeinu was fully aware of what the consequences of the Jews' action were. And he knew exactly what the Moshe wanted and what the problem was. Here's Moshe Rabbeinu is coming down with 2 luchas, right? And that's the Orishan, right? He comes halfway down the mountain and he throws it down the mountain and shatters it. You know, why? Because those 2 luchas, Rishonis, was the Orishan. And it would kill the Jews. You couldn't learn that. It would destroy you. The Kedusha of those luchas was so great that the Jew could not be soiled at all. So what did he do as a leader? He couldn't give it to them. He destroyed it. You see. Why? You should ask a tremendous question. Right? I understand something. If I give you a gift to give to Ruvain, right? Let's say I give you a diamond cufflinks. I say, bring this to Ruvain, because I got to go away. And you go to Ruvain's house, you knock on the door, yes? And all of a sudden somebody, comes to the door and says, is Ruvain there? No, Ruvain he went on a trip to Europe. Be back in a month. So I said, well, what do we do with the golden earring, golden cufflinks, whatever, diamond cufflinks, So you take the cufflinks and you throw it in the garbage. Does it make sense to you? No, it makes some sense. What are you supposed to do with the thing? You give back to the guy. The guy, you give it back to the owner. You don't throw it in the garbage. So let me ask something. If the Moshe said, Lakewood, go down, and he's walking around with this, and obviously he can't give it to Klal Yisrael, maybe you tell me why he didn't give it back to the Moshe. He should have said, hey, I can't give it to them, it's over with. Take it back. Right? You had a kasha. Why didn't he give it back? Good question.
Yeah.
And the answer is, who can figure out the answer?
Why
They'll
would
never
he put in
get
the
to
door?
that Kedusha again.
What?
They'll never get to that Kedusha again.
No, but why didn't he get, so what? So what? He can't give it to them, so give it back to God. What do you don't take and shatter it. He took the thing and he threw it at the base amount. He destroyed it.
For himself.
What?
He took the responsibility that it wasn't going to be followed.
Yeah, but how do you know to do that? You're playing around with the bonus. It's his stuff.
The R is here in his
It's
word.
his stuff. We don't play around with God. It's his stuff. Why didn't he give it back to Rebbe Hashem? How do you break his gift? That's the question. Nobody knows how? Nobody has an answer?
But he knew they had to be Makabal Torah. Just it was in the middle.
The Rebbe Hashem said, go down. Excuse me, they can't keep, your Kanesh corrupted themselves, Why did he break it? I don't understand. Why did he break it? He should have turned him around when he saw that the Jews were sinning by the golden calf, right? He should have turned around, went back, right up back to the mountain and said, here, Rebbe Hashem, take it back. It's yours. I can't give it to them. The question is, how do you break that? Where'd you get permission to do this? You understand what I'm saying? Right?
I think the Luchos in here themselves became too heavy to carry at that point.
No. Moshe Rabbeinu was very strong.
Was that
Carry
the
Luchos.
first set of Luchos the same 10 commandments that we have now?
No. Then he had to go back up again. In Luchos Shnias. You know what the answer is? He was talking to the Rebbe Hashem, and the Rebbe Hashem said to him, go down. Right? Why didn't the Rebbe Hashem say to him, give me back my stuff? Why didn't the Rebbe Hashem say, right then and there, give it me back, because they can't get it. So I want it back. And Moshe Rabbeinu would have just given it back to him. But the Rebbe Hashem never said anything. Nothing. You see. So Moshe Rabbeinu understood that the Rebbe Hashem doesn't want it back. So Moshe Rabbeinu had a tremendous problem. What do I do with it? I can't give it to them because they'll kill them. And the Rebbe Hashem doesn't want it back. You see? So he comes down the mountain. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He took it and he shattered it. Why? So he had a tremendous problem and he solved it. What was the problem? Because if he gives the Orishan back, what is the Orishan? Really, the surface of the Orishan is Kabbalah. That's what Kabbalah is. Kabbalah is the surface, right, of the real dimensions of reality. So if he gives it back to Hashem, then the Jews will never get anything beyond the second luchas, which is the halachas and so on. They'll never have a smattering of Kabbalah, or really hashkof and so on. You see. But what he did is, so what did he do? So if he can't give it to them, he doesn't want to give it back to the Hashem doesn't want it, so what does he do? So here's what he did. He compromised. He took it and shattered it, right? And then they gathered up all the pieces. And where are all the pieces of the yarn? In the yarn. Oh, so therefore, even though they can't read it because it's shattered, right? But the shefa, the ruach of this, is with us. So at least we therefore can have a connection to that ore, even if it's very, very superficial. You see? So he solved the problem. We have it and we don't have it. We don't have it because we can't read it, so we can never access the Orishan. until the time later on when we'll be able to get it. But since it's with us, it's in the luchas, right? It's in the luchas shattered, right? So, but those luchas are unbelievable. You know, they're not just stone. There's an incredible kedusha that emanates even from the fragments. So we have those fragments, right? And they're behind the Aram. And therefore, we have some type of a connection, a shaychus to the Or Rishon itself. Therefore, we can have Kabbalah also, you see. So the Haftarah of Matan Torah is really Ma'aseh Merkava, because Moshe Rabbeinu shattered it. And therefore, we have that access to that. That's why we have it. You see, Moshe Rabbeinu had to solve the problem. It wasn't just, it wasn't acting emotionally, although it was terrible to watch the Jews sinning and Moshe Rabbeinu. Look, he realized what the Jews were giving up. They were giving up the Or Rishon. This is crazy. For what? For some golden calf? It's crazy when you think about that. You know what I'm saying? Because he knew what he had in his hand. It was an all that the second luchas is hevel compared to the first. And he couldn't give it to the Jews. So he had to compromise. He knew the Moshe didn't want it back. So he compromised by making it available to them in fragmented pieces. But we can't read it. However, the all that comes out of those pieces gives us some type of connection. You see? So we can be Isaac and Sisrei Torah, the Kabbalah and so on and so forth, even though we can't really know the real bottom line of this. You see? So Moshe Rabbeinu solved the problem. Interesting. Anyway, that's why we read Ma'aseh Merkava, because that's really what it is. See, I want to say a Kaddish. You have a sitter? You want to give me a Kaddish Rabbana?
Yeah.
So I dedicated this shir to my shver, right? Chaim Mordechai Moshe, and I'm going to say a Kaddish in his memory, and the shir should be dedicated to Ilu Nishmasah.